Well, thank you everybody for joining us. It seems like we've got a much fuller house now, so that's good. It is a beautiful day in the high country and a great day to celebrate spring and just celebrate the life that we get living in the high country and seeing the beautiful scenery. I'm in a conference room right now and I can look out and I can see the green and the beautiful sky, and it's just a great day. So thanks all for taking time out of your day to join us. We are very happy for you to be here with us. We have a couple of really great presentations today that I think you'll be really excited to hear about. Our first presentation is titled Leveraging Tableau's ESRI ArcGIS Server Connector to Make Ministry Planning More Precise. Boy, Jarrett, you couldn't have made that title any shorter, couldn't you? Could you?
I try to use as many words as possible.
Yes. And Jared is from Samaritan's Purse, so he will be first up. And then our very own Ginny Moench from Appalachian State University will be giving a presentation on data scaffolding for tracking daily. And I know I am very excited to see that presentation as well. Once they are through, then I will give a little promo on TC22, especially if you're just attending virtually, which is which I plan to do this year, and I know a lot of us are, because it kind of caught us off guard being in the spring this year. But I'm going to give you some pages that you can go to get registered, to find out what's going on, to just get more information and get connected. So, and then we'll talk a little bit about our upcoming meeting. And we have a special surprise today. We do have some gift card giveaways for Tableau products. And if you've ever been to the Tableau gear store, it is filled with just excellent products and really fun stuff. So we will be giving away several gift cards, and to be in that drawing for one of those gift cards, we are encouraging you to be as interactive and as ask as many questions as possible, because that's going to improve your chances of getting a gift card. So I'll leave it at that, and let's just go ahead and hit the ground running. If you have any questions as we go along, please enter them into the chat. That is fine, and I will make sure that the presenter gets to hear your question. They'll speak about 20 minutes, give or take a few minutes, and then they'll have a few minutes to answer all those questions. So make sure that you comment and ask as frequently as you need to, okay? Ginny, did I miss anything?
No, I don't think so. You did great.
Okay, all right. Well, I am going to hand it off to Jarrett. So, Jarrett, take over.
Thanks, Stephanie. I appreciate you guys having me today. And so let me start by sharing my screen. And been using Tableau for a long time. This is my first TUG presentation, so here we go. At Samaritan's Purse, my role in the IT department is to support the Operation Christmas Child project. If you're not familiar with either of those names, Samaritan's Purse is an international humanitarian relief organization. We're a ministry, and we operate in over 120 countries with a wide variety of relief and aid-oriented programs. One of those projects is called Operation Christmas Child. Operation Christmas Child is a project to which, if you see this photo on screen, this gift, this box, we encourage folks to take a gift box, a shoe box or something similar in shape, fill it full of hygiene items, school supplies, gifts, toys, things like that, and we collect them annually and ship them to over 110 or 120 countries per year, to the tune of about 10 or 20 million of those gift boxes, and we ship them to children in need. So let's talk a little bit about how that process unfolds, and then we'll get into some of the technical things. that is really the meat of the presentation. So there's two phases of Operation Christmas Child. There's a collection phase, and then there's a distribution phase. On the collection side, again, we encourage children, seniors, all those in between to pack gift boxes. These are collected annually the third week of November through drop-off location in the United States of 5,000 drop-off locations. They funnel down to one of 9 processing centers. In those processing centers, they are prepared and are inspected and prepared for shipping internationally. Once those float across the ocean in sea containers, and while that process is actually happening on the collection side, we have a volunteer network of volunteer teams globally, which are working to prepare what we call ministry partners, primarily churches, orphanages, to receive those gift boxes and prepare them and train them in how the process will unfold. There are outreach events that occur once those gift boxes are in place, where children are invited to come to an outreach event and they are presented with those. There's a gospel presentation, as well as the gift is presented to the children. And then after that, there are follow-on programs that those children have an opportunity to optionally be invited back to those churches and to deepen a relationship with the church in their community. Operation Christmas Child is really all about connecting local churches, who are those who collect the gift boxes, to local churches and internationally, who are inviting these children and families in their communities to participate through local outreach events. So we're going to talk about unreached people groups. What is an unreached people group? In the ministry world, this is something I didn't have exposure to before I worked in ministry organization. So obviously, as a ministry, we're trying to reach people with the gospel. That's the point of ministry. But there are many people groups classified as those who have less than 2% of evangelical Christians inside of a particular group of people. So it's just a classification, a way to know if you're doing ministry and you're trying to target ministry where you haven't done ministry before. It's a way to identify groups of people who have not yet been approached with ministry and the gospel. So what I'm showing you on screen now are 2 particular known entities that track and inventory and collect information, up-to-date information about unreached people groups. One is called the Joshua Project, so joshuaproject.net, and one's peoplegroups.org, which is a project of the International Mission Board, which some may be familiar with. So those are 2 sources of truth that we look for to provide us data. And one of the challenges we've had as we look at how we prepare for a coming season in Operation Christmas Child, and they're deciding, well, where are we going to distribute our gift boxes? One of the goals within that is to, when possible, to identify unreached people groups in specific geographic areas, and use those as part of your annual ministry outreach. So try to reach unreached people groups. So what you're seeing now is a footprint, is a point-based map of volunteer teams. So each point represents a team of volunteers who serve year-round with Operation Christmas Child, who have been trained and selected and equipped to serve in a particular capacity on a volunteer team. There are 6 members to each team. So each of those dots represents that 6-person team. And so Operation Christmas Child International has roughly 8,000 volunteers globally, as represented on the map that you see. So for today's purpose, we're going to hone in on the continent of Africa, where we can see, again, a representation of the volunteer teams. The colors on these teams denote different leadership roles. So a team might have leadership responsibilities over other teams. So that's all the colors mean. It's more of a hierarchy of responsibility and leadership roles. So today, we're going to focus on a little closer in Africa, to the countries of Tanzania and Kenya. Again, a little closer look at where the volunteer teams, these are approximate locations of volunteer teams. The accuracy is not extremely important. It's important, but it's not extremely important down to the, to the foot level or anything like that. We're trying to get a general idea of where each volunteer team has an area of responsibility for ministry in that area. And so part of the planning process that we've talked about in my very long wordy title is, well, where do we have teams? And then in relation to where are those teams located, where are unreached people groups? So up until the ESRI ArcGIS server connector was available to us, we've been using point data. So the Joshua project, one of our sources for unreached people group data, has provided point level data. So they give us lots of data, but what it shows us in a point basis is where are unreached people groups. So if we right now I've just turned on a layer that shows the Joshua project data using points. And so there's lots of available unreached people groups sprinkled across these two countries and some outside of the country. Those are interesting points. Most point data is based off a centroid, which means it's trying to center the overall area that is represented by that people group. And so what the ESRI ArcGIS server connector has allowed us to do is to connect to the peoplegroups.org data where they provide polygons. So they have taken this data to the next level. Instead of just giving a point to where a particular people group exists or is thought to exist, they are drawing specific boundaries and polygons out of those boundaries, so that giving us another look at that. So I want to show you an example of why that is going to be much more precise for our ministry planning efforts. So as you can see here, we've got a lot of unreached people groups sprinkled throughout the country, and some are, close and even right on top of where we have volunteer teams. So in the next slide, I want to show you what it looks like to bring in the polygon data. So on the left, obviously the point data. On the right is the polygon data. And our ministry teams sprinkled across those countries as well. Now, these are polygons, so they're stacked. If we go in and look in certain geographic areas, you'll see that there are lots of them layered on top of each other. So obviously one people group doesn't exist one space. They commingle and they merge into civilizations and communities and cities to where you have hundreds of potential people groups, and there are countries that have those. So let me take you a step further. And in this particular example, I want to focus on one people group. And if anyone's a linguistics expert, pardon me, but we're going to call them the Maasai people group. I may be mispronouncing that, so I apologize. If let's just say in today's example, if we had identified that as a people group that we wanted to use our ministry volunteer teams to approach and to include in the coming year's plans. Well, if I'm looking at this map using point data, it would be, to me, it would seem obvious that the nearest team to this people group point is probably the team that I would assign to put in their plan for the coming year to go and approach the Maasai people group about receiving Operation Christmas Child gift boxes. And up until now, we've not had any way to look at why this wouldn't seem the most logical step forward. Once we're able to get polygon data and bring that in as well, this is the Maasai people group footprint as represented by a polygon. So had I used my previous data, I would have sent this particular team into this area, thinking that they were the closest and really the only one close to that people group. But what this polygon shows me is not only was that not going to be the case, but based off this polygon data, this particular team doesn't even have members of that people group in their proximity. And the polygon shows us that now, instead of thinking that I might put this particular people group into the ministry plan for one team, I actually have 11 teams across 2 countries that have the presence of that people group already in their vicinity and in their communities and in their villages. So, strategically, it's not up to me as far as how the department chooses. So they could use for all 11 to engage with that particular people group, or they could choose one and allow the other 10 or 11 to choose a different people group. And we aren't limited to one. But I did, for the purpose of the demonstration, I wanted to narrow this down to one particular group so that you could see kind of what stands out to me is a big difference between planning off of point data and planning off of polygon data, and how the precision by which we can move forward as a ministry, or Operation Christmas Child can move forward as a ministry, is much greater by honestly combining both data sets. So we can see the differences between the point data that's very trusted, it has a lot of associated data. There's 60, 70, 80 data points that accompany each of these people groups. Lots of different analytics that go into it. But just on the surface, in terms of area, this data connector has really given us a way to look at the prevalence of unreached people groups in certain geographic areas in a whole new way, and it should result in more precise ministry planning activities. Now, one of the challenges, okay, so let me stop here and let's see, I'm not looking, should I see if I have questions? We can stop and ask questions. So we can ask any questions if anyone has any, and then I'll talk about how I got the data together if we have a couple of minutes there, if you'd like. One of the fun challenges, if I guess I'm ineligible for the gift card, right? No, just kidding. I was reading the chat. So in Tableau Prep Builder, I wanted to bring in all of the using the ESRI connector, but the ESRI connector, ArcGIS connector, is only available in Tableau Desktop. It's not an option in Tableau Prep Builder yet. And so so what I did was, which you may have tried to do these types of fun things before, I jumped over into Desktop and I created a data source. Now, this is how easy it is to use this connector, by the way. The International Mission Board, the peoplegroups.org site, provides a part of their open data plan. They have a site where we can just grab these geoservice URLs, and that's literally it. You connect and it downloads all of the data, and it's huge. I'm not going to do it now. And so what I did was take that and then I published it to the Tableau server as a Tableau data source, because Tableau Prep can connect to Tableau data server data sources, but it can't yet connect directly to the connector. So I have a data source sitting on Tableau server that I then brought back into Prep so that I could take the Joshua project data and the ESRI connector data through from IMB and join those together, allowing me to see all of those, all of the data represented by both of those two sources together. There's something called a ROP3 number, which is a standard on Registry of Peoples, meaning that each of those sources contains an ID that allows us to make sure we're talking about the same exact people group and details. And then I join that up with our internal hierarchy of all those dots and teams that I showed you across the maps that are Operation Christmas Child volunteer teams, so that in one nice data source output here, I now have all of the Joshua Project, all of the peoplegroups.org, and all of the Operation Christmas Child geo hierarchical data in one single data source, so that it's really nice and easy, no blending, things like that, no challenges. It's nice and easy to work with. And then I publish this flow up to the server using Tableau Conductor, and have set a refresh cycle on it so that I can make sure that any changes that happen within OCC Operation Christmas Child, or either of those two entities that we're getting the freshest and most up-to-date data nightly. Let's see. I wanted to end with, of course, any questions you might have, come back here. Operation Christmas Child has distributed a little over 180 million gift boxes in our existence. Looking forward to hitting 200 million, I think about this time next year, which will be a big milestone for the ministry. But we are thankful for Tableau. We've learned so much about our data. Continue to learn things as new features are come out in the software. This is a really good practical example of why it's so important. And we love the rapid development that Tableau brings, because new connectors and new things like this can literally make huge impacts and changes on how us as an organization go about planning our ministry efforts. So I will open up for any questions.
Thanks, Jared. Justin has a question for you. He wants to know how you discovered the ESRI connector.
That's a good question. Actually, Michael Bishop, is on staff here at Samaritan's First, and he was doing some research. He's our ESRI or ArcGIS manager, and he oversees our environments and all of the GIS servers. And he had previously had some familiarity with the International Mission Board and some of their open data. He spends a lot of time up on the ArcGIS portal and had noticed some of their data there, and was able to help me run down that service and shared that URL with me. And then we actually had a Zoom call with their team at the International Mission Board just to get familiar with them guys. Those are some staff that have been working in this space for 20 plus years, and have really intimate knowledge of the data. So we felt really comfortable with their Polygon, the process by which they vet their data, so that we could confidently put it alongside of the Joshua Project data and use it for ministry planning.
Awesome, thank you. Amanda has a question for you. She asks, do you only utilize this for planning in-house, or do any of your users access any dashboards from the field?
Yeah, great question. Let's see. So we do have staff users in the field. So currently staff only have Tableau licenses. And so we do have some constraints there in terms of pushing out Tableau to our volunteer users, our volunteer base, who do tons of ministry activity, but they aren't going to be a licensed Tableau user. We do, however, have field staff. Some are based out of North Carolina, and some are based in, on location in Africa, in Europe, in different places like that we do ministry. So they are able to access Tableau through VPN. So hopefully that answers your question. It's a staff only constraint in terms of licensing.
Great. Are there any other questions for Jared? Okay, none right now. So thank you, Jared. That was really interesting. And if you do have questions that you think of later on, I'm sure that we can get you Jared's email address, and he can address your questions one-on-one. Okay, thanks, Jared. Okay, next up is Ginny. And Ginny's going to be talking about date scaffolding. So I will pass on the baton to Ginny now.
Thanks so much, Stephanie. Kind of hard to follow, Jared. I love mapping, and I don't get to use it very much in my job, so it's always fun for me to see what other people do with maps. I am Virginia, or Ginny Moench, from Appalachian State University, and I'm an enrollment management business intelligence analyst there. And I'm going to share my screen and talk about date scaffolding for tracking daily blank. And I left this blank because you can track a lot of things on a daily basis. Just as for example, I track enrollment and retention, and maybe you work in a sales and you want to track your daily sales over a certain amount of time. You can track daily applications. You can track daily employment if you're trying to see when your people start and leave the company. So there are a lot of use cases for tracking daily fill in the blank. So I just wanted to pause for a moment and let everyone comment in the chat box and fill in the blank. And I would love to hear what some of you think you would use daily tracking to do. Yeah, daily COVID cases, absolutely. Special events. And that's kind of what I'm going to be using as an example for today. I'm going to be tracking the registration for our Analytics Day event that's coming up in June. Doctor enrollments in specific study clubs. I think any type of enrollments, definitely something worth tracking on a daily basis, especially if you're comparing year over year. So feel free to add anything in the chat as you think of it. If you'd like, I'm going to go on and we're going to talk about what is date scaffolding. And it's actually really simple. Date scaffolding is when you have a list of dates connected to your data source that fills in the missing dates. So on the left, we have our date scaffold, April 1st through April 7th. All the dates are there. All of them are accounted for. On the right, we have our data. We have 7 different IDs, and all of them have a start date, but not all of the dates between April 1st and April 7th are represented. So April 3rd is missing, April 6th is missing, and then we have end dates. Not everyone has an end date. Like in our case, we're going to be tracking enrollment or registration. So if a person has a start date, that's the date that they registered. If they have an end date, that means maybe they canceled their registration. So not everyone will have an end date, but everyone should have a start date. And because there are missing dates in between there, we have a date scaffold to kind of fill in those blanks. And then this is the type of visualization that you can build with that date scaffold. This particular example is one that I built to track our fall point in time enrollment. So this is days after a student registers for classes until the day that classes start. So that is just one example of tracking. And that particular example is tracking point in time. And I want to just kind of get everyone on the same page and help you understand what I mean when I say point in time, because I'm going to say it several times during the presentation. So when we track point in time, it's not necessarily looking at a calendar date. If we were, saying how many days before May 1st did this happen, that would be different than saying at what point in time did this happen. So today is April 25th, as you see in the red square at the bottom left. So point in time in 2021, week 18, Monday was April 26th. They're not the same calendar day. They are close, but they're not. And then in 2020, it was April 27th. So when I say point in time, I'm comparing week 18, Monday of this year to week 18, Monday of last year, and week 18, Monday the year before. And you can go back as far as you need to. So I made this handy little reference just so I can kind of keep in my head, what exactly we're comparing. And if this was a live version, you could hover over each calendar square to see the calculation for how many days ago that was, which we're going to see in just a little bit. And now what's next? We're going to jump into Tableau prep for a little bit. We're going to talk about how to join your date scaffold to your data. We're going to talk about different date calculations that you can use and point in time calculations. Then we're going to go into Tableau desktop to build the viz. And we're going to talk about filters that you can use, parameters, and do a couple more date calculations. So without further ado, we'll jump right in. All right, so this is our Tableau prep flow. And I'm just going to click and familiarize you with the data that we're going to be using. It's really simple. We have all of our IDs. These are unique IDs. There are no duplications. That may not be the case in your data. There may be duplicates if somebody were to register, then withdraw, and then register again. So you do have to be aware of your data, what it looks like, and those special cases, you have to have a workaround for. So with each ID, we have their registration date. And then if they have withdrawn, we have their withdrawal date. And then finally, we have the year. And the year is just because this is collected through a survey form, and we have a new survey form every year. So that's where that data field comes from. And then we have our date scaffold. Our date scaffold is even simpler. We have all of the dates from January 1st through December 31st of every year. And we have 3 years of dates. So we can see in 2020, 366, 365, and 365. Now, you can have a separate date scaffold if you know for certain that your registrations start no earlier than this day and they end no later than this day. You can have a date scaffold that is already pre-built for that specific date range, but you really don't have to do that. You can just have a calculation that filters the dates later on. And that's what I chose to do for this example, because it's easier just to have one date scaffold that you can use for everything. And that would need to include all of the dates. So originally, this only had dates in it, and I did write a calculated field that's called the year of registration. And the reason I want to write this field is because I need that year to connect the data to my data source. So we just take the year from the date scaffold date, and that is going to be our join. But first you have to change it to a string, because in our data source, the year field is a string. So then we're going to bring them together by doing an inner join on year. Now, you might want to know why we don't do a join between the date scaffold date and the day of registration. Since everyone has a day of registration, there are no nulls. And you could do that. You could do a join where you keep all of the dates in your date scaffold and do a left join with your dates. But I just find it easier to connect year and year of registration when you have that option, because then we can use that date field from the date scaffold to compare against multiple date fields in your data source. So we'll move on to our calculations, where we're going to do several different calculations that we're going to use in our viz. I went ahead and removed the year of registration because it's an inner join. We all have the same years in both data sources. We don't need to repeat that. And then I wrote a point in time date calculation. So this only says if the year is 2022, then we are looking at today, because today is the most recent data that we have. And if you update this on a daily basis, then you'll have, today's data. If it's only updated once at night, which is the case with our point in time enrollment data, it's updated at midnight every night, and I pull it every morning. Then I use today -1. So always looking at yesterday. But if this is something that can refresh automatically, we can just use today. So if we're looking at 2022, then we want to compare today. If we're looking at 2021, we want to compare today to 364 days ago. And 2020, today minus 728 days. This gives us a date field for every different year so that we can compare year over year. And so these are the outputs for our point in time. So we have 4/25/22, that's today, versus 4/26/21 versus 4/27/2020. And if you recall back when we looked at our point in time calendar, those are the correct dates. So next we're going to write a date diff calculation to find out how many days is the current point in time from the dates on our date scaffold. So it's just date diff at the day level, looking at our point in time date as the beginning and our date scaffold as the end. So if you click on the date diff reference here, it explains how this formula works. So this returns the difference between two dates where the start date is subtracted from the end date. So we have the point in time as our start date and the date scaffold as our end date. But we're going to subtract the two to get a number of days. Now, sometimes I get really confused about which one needs to be the start date and which one needs to be the end date. And the good news is you can try it one way, and if it's not working correctly, you can just switch the two around, and then you'll have what you're looking for. So I want to know if the point in time is before the date scaffold, then it should be a negative number. And if it's after, it should be a positive number. All right, so we can check that work by saying, here is our registration date for this particular ID. They registered on 6/10/2020. And our date scaffold is January 1st of 2020. So they registered 117 days after the date on our date scaffold. And that is what I want it to look like. So next we'll write a beginning of registration calculated field. And the reason I do this is because our date scaffold has all the dates from January 1st through December 31st. I want to create this calculation so I can filter those dates to only be from the first day of registration to the last day of registration for each year. So it's a really simple calculation. Again, we're going to date parse, and we want it in month, day, year. So if the year of the registration date is 2022, the first day of registration was April 8th. And if we're looking at 2021, the first day of registration is April 4th. And if we're looking at 2020, the first day of registration is April 17th. So that will create those 3 date fields for us. And then we do the same thing for the end of registration, and we have our last day for each different year. And then finally, we're going to filter our date scaffold. We only want to keep the dates on our date scaffold that are greater than or equal to the beginning of registration and less than or equal to the end of registration. So that will go ahead and shrink down that date scaffold for us. The last piece we're going to create is to be used as a filter when we build our viz. So I'm interested in counting the people who are registered at a specific point in time. So in order for them to be registered at a specific point in time, their registration date has to be less than or equal to the date scaffold. And they either have to have a null withdrawal rate or their withdrawal date has to be after the current point in time that we're looking for. So we're going to look at the withdrawal date after the date scaffold. So this is just a Boolean filter that we'll put in our viz. All right, so then we have our output, which has already been run. And we're going to go in and build the viz from scratch. So we're going to right click on the current point in time and drag that up to our columns. And then we want to select all values. We have this nice little clicker across the top. We want a count of our IDs on each individual day. So we're going to right click on ID, drag that 2 rows, and we want a count. All right, we want to look at this year over year. So we need to put the year in here somewhere, and I'm going to put it on color. So at this point, I'm really confused why all these straight lines are just clouding up my viz. Before we added the year, we had some nice movement. But the reason is because we're just looking at the total at the end of the point in time. What we want is a day-to-day. So that's where our registered filter comes in. We only want to look at people registered on each day. So we'll drag that into filters and select true. And now we have what I'm expecting to see more, which is early in the registration, we only had a few people registering. And then as registration goes on, that number grows and grows and grows. But 2022 is looking like a flat line. Here's day 0, that's today. And we know that 2022 registration for tomorrow hasn't happened yet, and neither has it all the way through the deadline. So how do we get rid of this long straight line so that we're not comparing inaccurate data? So that's actually really easy to solve. I create a calculated field. We're going to call this before today. We only want to look at the days that occurred before today. So we just say, is our date scaffold before today or equal to? Hit OK. We'll put that in true, or sorry, put in the filters, select true, and zoop, there goes our long straight line of inaccurate data. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on the labels so you can kind of see and make them the same color as their lines. So you can kind of see how each year compares to the other years. And we're always looking at day 0. So like this year, we're at 392 registered. Last year, we were at 411. And then in 2020, we were at 231. All right, so now we have our point in time lines. We're looking at the correct date. And then you publish this and your boss comes back and says, well, that's great. We do want to know where we were at the same point in time compared to last year. But what if another user wants to see where we were at the number of days after registration started? Or somebody wants to see, as you're approaching the deadline, how we look compared to the end of registration. So we didn't create those calculations when we were in Tableau Prep. And yes, we could go back, create them there, run it again, update our extract, add those new fields, but we can also create them in Tableau Desktop. So let's say we want to create a calculated field called beginning. And this is just going to be the same date diff calculation at the day level. And we want to look at the date that is the beginning of registration as our start, and then our date scaffold as our end. And so you recall we created these beginning and end of registration date fields so that we could filter our date scaffold. Well, I left those in the data, and that's a good thing because now we're going to use them for this. All right, so now we can just duplicate this and edit. So this is going to be the end. And we'll just replace this beginning of registration with the end of registration. All right, so now we have current point in time, beginning, and the end. And we could just create 3 different tables for this, or we could create a parameter that lets people select which one they want to look at. So we'll just create a parameter. I'm going to call this comparison. I'm going to make it a string parameter with a list of values to choose from. So point in time is 1 value, beginning is 1, and end is 1. Then we're going to create a calculated field, and this will show the comparison. So I'm going to use a case when. So case comparison when point in time, then we want to look at the current point in time. When beginning, then we'll look at the beginning. When end, and we'll look at the end. And hit OK. So now we're going to right click on our show comparison calculation and drag it to columns and replace our current point in time with that. Nothing changed, and that's because our parameter is set to point in time, which is what was already on our viz. We can go in and change this to beginning, and here we have day 0 at the beginning, looking at registration days out. Or we can compare it to end, and day 0 is at the end, it's the deadline, and we can see how we are doing as we're approaching that deadline. So different end users, different needs, but a parameter makes it all possible. One thing I do like to do to help people get a visual comparison is bring in a constant line, and we'll edit that, right click and edit. We're going to put that value at 0. So we're always going to have our constant line at day 0. We don't need to show a label or a tooltip. We'll just have a dark line with some really light shading. And then I will go in here and format my lines, get rid of these grid lines. They're just distracting. And so now we've got our 0 line moving with the viz so that you can have a real quick idea of where you are comparing each time that you select a different option on your parameter. All right, well, that being said, I will open the floor to questions.
Okay, anybody have any questions for Ginny? That was awesome.
Thank you.
I got to tell you, I was
use a
really
lot.
impressed.
Not a question, but that's really helpful to look at. We have lots and lots of needs for year-to-year comparisons, and of course, they never line up. So it's helpful to see that.
Absolutely. You can also create another comparison that's by calendar date if that is something that you need. I know, for instance, we always have a deadline of May 1st for students to decide whether they're going to accept their admittance or not. So comparing it against that calendar date in that particular situation makes sense. Well, I will say that I'll bring up my email again in case you do need to contact me later with any questions. That is my email. Feel free to reach out. And I will turn it over to Stephanie to talk about the Tableau conference.
Awesome. Thanks again, Ginny. All right. Let me share my screen. Okay, so if you haven't heard yet, then you've been living under a rock for the past few weeks. The Tableau conference for 2022 is scheduled for May 17th through 18th of 2022, so it's just a few weeks away. If you have not registered yet, registration is open, so make sure that you register. Now you can register both virtually and in person. Can you guys see, did it go to the website?
No, I think you'll have to do a new share.
Okay, go new share. Okay, you see that now?
Yes, we can see it now.
Okay, great, thanks. Okay, so this is where you register, and like I said, you can register in person. If you haven't done that yet, you probably should do that soon. I'm not sure if they have a cap on registration for in person. They might. If you want to do that, take care of it ASAP. If you want to register virtually, I don't think there's a deadline for that, but you will probably want to register as soon as possible so you can get signed up, get an idea of what sessions you want to go to. Now, there are many different sessions that are still listed, and I will show you the website for that as well. They have a session calendar or catalog that is up, and all the sessions are organized by 6 different themes. There's all things data, analytics for everyone, customer 360 analytics, data culture, keynote, and Tableau economy. So you can just go through and look at all of these. Now that I don't believe that the schedule itself is available. I think that the schedule builder comes available in May. In fact, it says right there. So then you can actually go through and you can look and see when all of these are going to be scheduled during the conference, and then you can add them to your own schedule. And then you'll get reminders and you'll be able to view the session, I believe, through the schedule builder. Yeah, this is going to be good. There's a lot of good sessions already. I have some in mind personally that I know that I want to attend. So now there is a frequently asked question page. So if you have any questions about the conference, they are all listed here. And when you are getting ready to choose which sessions you want to attend, it can be kind of overwhelming, especially if you've never been to a Tableau conference before, because there are just so many good sessions. So I would just recommend just a couple things. One, always try to go to the keynotes. The keynotes are always really good. So on day 1, there's going to be the keynote in the morning, and then there's a thought leader keynote in the afternoon. And on day 2, there's another keynote, but there is also the Iron Viz. And if you've never seen Iron Viz, you really need to tune in to Iron Viz, because it's very cool to watch all these different contestants developing their dashboards and visualizations right in front of the audience. So it's very neat to watch, and especially since it's going to be live this year and in person, it's even better. Last year, they did it, I think they kind of did it remotely, and it wasn't as fun, but it is great fun to watch and just to see how these people do what they do. So also great to get inspiration for things that you might be interested in doing. So keep looking for the schedule builder to come up. There is also a you can go to a, let's see if I have it here, it might be here. Yes, there is a staff picks for must-see sessions, which are very, very good as well. They have some good suggestions for things that you might want to go to. So take a look at this as well. And I'll go ahead and I'll put all these URLs in the chat so you can copy them down. I think that is it. No, there is one more thing that I think Kelly wanted me to show, and that is the remote hangouts. So this will be a chance to be able to interact virtually with other people, other Tableau users. One of the great things about attending a conference is that you can meet up with lots of different people, make a lot of new connections, meet a lot of people, especially this year, people that you may only know virtually. But if you're still doing it remotely, then this will give you a way to hang out and socialize with people in the virtual universe. So I think there are 3, but the one on May 17th is American friendly, and so is the one on the 18th. So anyway, take a look at that. And Feel free to participate as any way that you can. All right. Are there any questions about PC 22? Let me go ahead and I will put those URLs in the chat box. So stick around for that. Finally, what I wanted to let you guys know is that our next High Country Tableau user group meeting, we are going to try to have it in person. This is the first time that we've been able to have a meeting in person. And we're looking at a July-August meeting date. So probably late July, sometime in August, probably be around the same time, like a 3 to 4:30, with maybe some networking time afterwards. So a chance to get to know other people, talk to them, get ideas from them, see how they're using Tableau, that sort of thing. So stay tuned. I'm also going to give you the URL to our LinkedIn group. So you can join that LinkedIn group and you can get notice ahead of time of when we plan to have that meeting scheduled. So just stay tuned for that. We are very excited about being able to do something in person now. Now, finally, we have our giveaway. We do have 4 gift cards for $25 each to give away. And I am going by the people who have participated in the chat. And that would be Kathy Ziegler, Justin Arnold, Amanda Harper, and Dare McNamara. Dare, is that how I pronounce your name? I hope so. But anyway, if you guys can go ahead and send me your email address and I will get those to Ginny. She has the keys to the gift cards and she will send those on to you. So congratulations. And if anybody has any final questions, feel free to put them in the chat. And I will be putting some URLs in there for you guys to grab before you leave. And if you have any questions, just let me know. But thank you so much for everybody for attending. Thanks. Bye.